Okay, hello. I guess I'll call this part 3 of the hair on deer tan. It's a little look of the hide I chose to use. It's a smaller hide. This is a good use for it. I can take advantage of a small hide but nice hair, because normally something like this wouldn't make great buckskin. But this is really poor video quality. This was shot at night, but I wanted to show the initial braining. This is actually the deer brains that I dug out of the roadkill deer. I'm just going to blend them up and rub it into the skin. This is the most basic way of brain tanning. This is probably historically how a lot of times it was done. I could just see this being done by the campfire or after a hunt, and just, very primitive, rubbing the brains into the skin. But there's a few steps here that you do want to keep in mind, and I'm going to go over that here in this video. You saw early on there a bucket with some liquid in it. That is also emulsified oil solution. Basically a brain substitute. That in that bucket contained water and a couple eggs and a little bit of mayo all mixed in there. And that serves as the same purpose as brains do. It's just an alternate if you don't want to use the brains. There's actually a couple of things you can use. Soaps and oils will work too. What you see me doing here is, after applying the brain, you really want to make sure you fold skin to skin. The skin structure, it's a big network of skin fiber, and it kind of acts as a sponge, and you kind of really want to make sure it all makes contact to get that brain to transfer throughout the skin and kind of distribute the moisture evenly. This is day 2. I'm getting ready to rebrain the skin. What I did was, I did this over 2 days. I did the initial braining, rolled it up, and kept it by a heat source, by the wood stove actually. That began, the brains began to actually soak into the hide at that point. Then later on that day, I did the same procedure. I rebrained and stretched it a little bit as the hide was being loosened. And you can see this is day 2. I'm getting ready to do it again. What I'm doing is I'm opening up the skin. I'm kind of pulling apart the fiber, seeing what areas are still a little stiff and haven't absorbed the moisture yet. And those are the areas I'm going to reapply a little bit more liquid to. This is really important. You want to really be mindful of what areas aren't loose yet, because I'm slowly increasing the moisture content of this hide. You might ask, why not just dump this hide in a bucket of water like if I were doing buckskin? And the answer is you can absolutely do that, but then your hair and everything is going to be sopping wet, and it's going to take forever for the hide to dry out. What I'm doing here is I'm strategically, over 2 days, slowly increasing the moisture content of the hide, so I just have enough for it to reach the pliable state, and then I'm going to work, and it's going to cut down on the drying time. So over 2 days, I did this twice a day. I would brain, stretch a little bit, rebrain, and after day 2, I'll actually begin to work this hide. Right now, I'm just kind of finding what areas are a little stiff yet, what areas aren't fully absorbed yet, and I'm going to pour a little bit more solution on it. So you see I'm using very little water, but I'm also using very little oil. You don't want to go crazy and just cover your hide in oil. You kind of want to slowly introduce it. If you were just to pour straight oil all over this hide, you'd have a very slippery mess. You'd probably clog a lot of the skin up, and it would take forever to dry out if it would even absorb deep into the skin. So by diluting it in water and creating what's called emulsified oil solution, you're causing a little bit of oil to slowly be drawn through all the fibers of the skin. And by spacing this out over 2 days and applying a heat source, you're really causing it to soak in and not add too much water at the same time. So I'm cutting down on my dry time. Time of year really determines how fast this hide will dry out. This is winter, and it's about 20 degrees outside, so this hide is going to take a while to dry out. So you can strategically do this at different times of the year. If it's a nice, warm, sunny day with a breeze, your hide's going to dry out faster once you go to actually work it. But this is the initial braining. This is how I like to brain my pelts. It's slowly introducing brain in water and not over soaking the hide. So right now you're actually going to see where we're physically tanning the deer skin. This is the softening phase, and if you want a little bit more detail on what's actually happening right now, you can check out a video I have on my brain tanning deer series called Softening the Hide. And I go over a little bit more what's happening, but what you're seeing me do here is working the fur by hand. It's one way of doing it, but it's not the only way, and there's probably better ways actually. You'll probably find many good examples online of frame softening hides, and that's a pretty good way to go if you're doing a pelt, especially a deer pelt, because as you see, I'm going to be pulling on this hide, but I'm going to have a lot of hair breaking and a lot of hair shedding. You'd probably have less if you frame softened, and you'll also gain some of the benefits of frame softening, like well, you'd be using a paddle, and that increased friction will help the hide to dry out a little sooner. But you also have, like I said, you have to consider the time of year. This is winter, and it would be a big setup for me to kind of get a frame indoors where it would be warm enough for this hide to dry out. Alright, you heard me mention drying your hide indoors where it's warm, but you never want to put your hide by a direct heat source and try to work it. The heat coming off would more than likely dry the outside of the skin too quickly, and it would encase any moisture that's left deep inside the hide, and you'd never be able to really work it. It would get trapped in there, and the hide would dry stiff in the center of the skin. So it's a delicate balance. You kind of want to work your skins in a ideally 70 degrees breeze, but just picture somewhere where you'd want to dry your clothes. So this hide has to naturally dry out as you work it, and you never want to do that too quickly because you have to keep working it as it's drying out. So if you want any more information on what's going on, I have a brain tan series where I go in a little bit more detail, but this is how I would tan a hide in the winter. Feel free to ask any questions. If you have them, leave me a comment, and I'd be happy to talk deer skins with you. So thanks for watching. Take care.